so let's open up the legal legislative committee. And we have no public, so we don't need to read it. We have one item of discussion. That's a consideration of the extension of Best and Krieger Legal Services Agreement.
Yeah, I will take it away. Thank you, Chair Hernandez. So you may recall that Best and Krieger provides us legal services. We signed them to an original 3-year agreement, and it had the option for 2 one-year extensions. I think their original contract expired, the 3-year term expired in March of 2021. We missed that deadline, right, due to COVID and a whole bunch of other things. But the board ultimately did extend it. So they granted the first of the 2 one-year extensions, which would take us to the end of March of 2022, at which time we'd have to decide whether the board wanted to take advantage of the second and last one-year extension. When the board did agree to extend the legal services agreement by the 1 year, there were concerns expressed by a board member that they didn't feel they had an opportunity to evaluate the legal services. So how could they be asked to extend the legal services? I believe it was a 4-1 vote. The board decided to extend it, but there was a commitment, as comments made by probably a majority of the board, and a commitment that we would be more thoughtful before the next one-year extension. So what does that mean, more thoughtful? To me, what that means is we can't wait until March of 2022, right?
Yep.
Because if the board says, no, we don't want to extend it, then we don't have a plan B. We don't have any bench strength, right? So I put a note on my calendar to agendize it for this meeting in October here with both of you to talk about the process of what we want to do. So a couple of things. So one is, I think we need to schedule an evaluation for our general counsel.
Yep.
And that would give all 5 board members, including our 2 newest board members, the opportunity to provide their feedback, right? You can rely on maybe comments of what's been received in the past, but better if you just rely on your own experiences. So Director Pennick, you've been here since December, so you're coming up on 10 months, right? So you have a feel. We want to know what Jim Pennick thinks, and we want to know what Tiffany thinks, and we want to know what the other 3 think too. So I told Mr. Gilpin, first of all, I told him about this meeting. I told him I would probably be scheduling his evaluation in the October-November timeframe. I'll probably schedule a closed session before the next board meeting, not tomorrow's board meeting, but the October 20th board meeting, to kind of kick off the process. Mr. Gilpin probably can't join that closed session. I'll lead that one. But at that meeting, and this is all assuming that the committee is okay with this approach, but at that closed session, I would give a summary of what I just said. I would say why we're looking into this now. I would hand out evaluation forms and maybe give a deadline. And that deadline would probably be within 2 weeks, so that in the first meeting in November, we could share with the board the results of the feedback, right? So I would hand something out on October 20th. You guys would each have maybe a week or 10 days to provide me with feedback. I would summarize that feedback. And then at the first meeting in November, and I apologize, I don't remember the date, but the first board meeting in November, we would have a closed session. And in that, we can go over the review, go over the evaluations, determine if the board's comfortable with the level of service we're getting. And at that meeting, probably look for a determination from the board. The determination being, do we think we want to exercise the last 2-year or 1-year extension? And we wouldn't need a formal approval that day. We could actually wait until March to get that formal extension. But the flip side, if the board says, no, we should either, we should look for other services. So maybe we are unhappy with the performance, or maybe we just want to test the waters and see if there's a better attorney firm at a better price, or pick another reason. If the board says, no, we want to solicit for other services, I need time. So I would need to prepare an RFP. I need to put it out on the street, give competent firms an opportunity to respond. And then we'd have to go through some sort of a selection process. And when we got Best and Krieger on board, we included the Legal and Legislative Affairs Committee. And I apologize, I can't remember who made up that committee. I know Hal was on it, and I can't remember the other. Director Hernandez, I don't remember if it was you.
I think it was.
Okay. So we asked the committee to help us vet the proposals. And then we interviewed the final two, and then we made a selection, and then you have to negotiate a contract, and then you have to take it to the board for approval. And this all takes time, right? And I'm guessing it's going to take about a good solid 3 months.
Yeah,
So I would need to get notification probably in November. And then when you throw in the holidays there, that's hard to get things done. I
yeah,
would probably need to hear back from our board in November whether the board wanted to go out. And if the board wants to go out for new legal services, I would start the process probably in the December timeframe. And with that, we could probably have a new contract for legal services ready in March. So, and I think it's the end of March. I think it's March 30th that the contract runs through. So that's our goal, is to make sure that we have continuity in legal services so that on April 1st of 2023, we're not left unprepared, right? If the board wants to stay with Best and Krieger for the second and final 1-year extension, that's fine. If they want to go out and test the waters, that's fine too. And testing the waters doesn't mean we've given up on Best and Krieger, right? We may choose to test the waters. Best and Krieger would be permitted to submit a proposal unless the board didn't want, if the board wanted to exclude them, and I can't imagine why you'd want to do that. But the board, so Best and Krieger could resubmit for consideration. It would just mean that the board's not exercising the second and final 1-year extension. So I'll turn it over to you, both of you right now, but I just want to let you know that in the chance that the board did not want to exercise that second and final 1-year extension, I need to know in the November timeframe. So I wanted to start with both of you in October to see if that's where we're heading. But in either case, I think it makes sense to do the performance evaluation in October, November timeframe, just so that we have a current feedback from the directors, and we can provide guidance to Best and Krieger on how they can improve their services, regardless of whether we exercise the final 1 year or not. So Chair Hernandez, I'll turn it back over to you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jim, you got any input, what you think about that?
No, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, be honest, I would go to you. I mean, who does general counsel interact with on a regular basis? Is it us, the board? Is it you, the GM? Is it who else?
You guys is probably the least. So I know we want to hear your perspective, but if we counted their total hours, you're probably less than 5% of their interaction. They interact with me, they interact with Rondi and James and Ed and their subordinate staff, and occasionally Wes for rate issues, like, when we do Prop 218 hearing things. So all of my managers and their supervisors interact with Best and Krieger. And it's not just General Counsel Gilpin. Gilpin has, one of the reasons we picked Best and Krieger is they have a real deep bench, right? They have experts in just about every field. So when we ask the board, what's your feedback on Best and Krieger, you're probably going to tell me, what do you think of Jim Gilpin, right? And that's this big. When I ask staff, and that'll be part of the evaluation, I would recommend that we want to hear from staff. You're going to get a much broader feedback. We may not necessarily relate it to individual attorneys at Best and Krieger. We may just say in general. So you may hear comments like, they're generally great, but sometimes it takes them too long to turn a contract around. You don't need to know that it was Rebecca from Best and Krieger that takes too long. And those are just examples. I don't mean to throw Rebecca under their bus. I'm just giving you an example.
Mhm.
So the board's feedback is important, staff's feedback is important, but collectively, we need to get some feedback to get a comfort level that Best and Krieger is the best firm to move us forward. So, but I will add this, it takes staff a long time to get used to new legal services. So before I started, we had Jeff Scott and Company was our legal services provider, Scott Jackson Law Firm, I think it was, and they were a three-person firm, and they had been with the district 30 years, I think, Director Hernandez.
Yep.
Long time. So you get, I wouldn't say stuck in your ways, but you're used to doing things a certain way over that period of time. And when we went to Best and Krieger, it probably took us over a year to really get comfortable with how to work with them. They do things differently. They disagreed with some of the previous legal advice and you had to work through those issues. I can't count the number of times we said, well, that's not the advice we got from Jeff Scott. And And Jim Gilpin would say, well, I'm your legal counsel now, and this is our interpretation, right? Sometimes the law evolves, there's new case law that's established, or maybe they just have a fundamental disagreement on how they interpret the law. So you work through those issues, you finally get a new rhythm, and it could be simple things like new contract language. Our contracts look very different than when Jeff was here. So Glenn Pruitt's opinion, your manager's opinion, there needs to be a good reason to move away from your current legal services. It shouldn't be just to test the waters or see if there's a cheaper price or we want somebody new. I think there should be good justification. So I'm not trying to support Jim Gilpin here right now. I'll get my opportunity to give you my input in the evaluation, but I'd like to think that we're very thoughtful and we understand the consequences of switching legal providers, because there's a lot of inefficiencies that get introduced while you're getting up to speed with new legal services. So anyway, back to the both of you.
Well, I think we need to get an evaluation accomplished as soon as possible. And that way we'll have that in our hip pocket. Then we can make a recommendation based on that evaluation to either renew or go out, not throwing Jim under the bus, but go out and see if we can see who shows up and then make a full decision. Or if it's comfortable with the rest of the board, we just agree to extend the one more year and then we can do it again next year at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. So in line with that, here's what I'd recommend. October 20th, closed session, start the process, talk about the evaluation, hand out forms, give a deadline, and then commit to a closed session at the first board meeting in November, during which we'll actually perform the evaluation.
Right.
It would include the board having an opportunity to talk without Mr. Gilpin present. I can say, hey, here's a summary of the comments I received. And then Mr. Gilpin will come into the room and the board will have an opportunity to provide feedback to Mr. Gilpin. And then Mr. Gilpin may leave again and the board have some time, because he may give an opportunity to rebut things, right? He may hear a comment that he disagrees with or has an explanation for why. For example, they may say, wow, it looks like our legal service costs have really gone up. He needs to be able to explain, well, you've been hit with this lawsuit and that lawsuit and that lawsuit. That wasn't him, right? He's defending us. So there's an iterative process about feedback, whether he's in or not in the room. At the end of the day, he'll receive the feedback. But what I would need from the board is I would need direction at that first meeting in November to say, do you want me to start an RFP process? I don't need you to tell me to extend his agreement. I just need to know if you want me to start the process. If you tell me, if the board as a whole says, no, don't bother starting the process, then you know that time is going to pass and we're going to go to March, and I'm going to approach you close to March and say, you'll see an item on an agenda that says, do you want to exercise the final extension? And I don't want the board at that time to say, well, we don't know if we need to talk about this. And then we will have lost that ability to go through the RFP solicitation process. So that's what I'd be looking for in November.
Yeah, I think we need to push for, after the evaluation, a consensus as to whether we're going to extend or we're going to go out and look.
Right.
And if we get a consensus one way or the other, we can then move forward. So we'll have plenty enough time to make the ultimate decision, either to extend and or hire a new person.
Right.
But we'll have that in our hip pocket.
Right. Now, let's say we did that, Director Hernandez, and you collectively, whatever the vote is, say, no, we don't want to solicit. Keep in mind that there would still be an item on the agenda in March that says extend the legal services agreement, and that'll be another vote, right?
Right.
So let's say one person didn't want to keep Best and Krieger, and they vote no, they say, hey, we should go through an RFP process in November. And they lose on a 4-1 vote, right? So we don't go through the RFP process, and we put an item in the March agenda to extend the agreement. That same board member could still say, I vote no, I don't think we should extend this.
Yeah.
And maybe it's still a 4-1 vote, or maybe something happened in the interim where 2 other board members switch sides and say, no, we really think we should. But at least the board will recognize that, okay, we didn't solicit. Here we are in March. The agreement expires at the end of March. We can hurry up and do an RFP, but it may take us 3 months.
Yeah,
We could still use Best and Krieger beyond March 30th on some general contractual carryover provisions.
yeah, right, sure.
Their services don't stop on April 1st. Just like this year, when we missed the window, they still represented us for that period of time, and that's fine. So I just want to make sure you're all comfortable with how that would play out.
I understand that completely.
Okay, so I'm okay with that approach. And as a side note, I'll probably be doing my evaluation at the same time. So you're probably going to see a series of performance evaluations, one for the general counsel, one for the general manager. Very similar. You'll have an introductory kickoff meeting, probably both on October 20th. The board will be given an opportunity to provide their input for evaluation. When we're evaluating Gilpin, you'll send your comments to me. And then when you're evaluating me, you'll send your comments to Gilpin, right? So when you guys evaluate me, I never see specific comments from any of you. So Gilpin will get your comments about me, he'll compile them, and then I'll get these unattributed comments, right? It'll kind of be laundered, so I don't know who said what. Same thing with the general counsel. I'll get all of your comments, I'll compile them, I'll share them with the board, and the board can share those with Gilpin. But so you've got this parallel process, the GM being evaluated, the council being evaluated, but we're overseeing each other's evaluation. So I still see the same thing though. October 20th kickoff, first meeting in November, maybe the kind of the formal evaluation. The difference will be Gilpin's will probably be a yes, no, do we continue? And mine may have some substance about terms, conditions, and there's a financial component to mine that has to go to the board in an open session, but generally it's a parallel process. So I know my evaluation is not agendized today, but I'm just letting you know that they expect this parallel process in the through the October, November timeframe.
Okay, I'm good with all that. Jim, how you feel?
Yep, agree. Do we get to see the staff's comments as well and their evaluation?
Yeah, for Gilpin, yes. You won't for me. Staff doesn't evaluate me, but I will be asking staff's input on Gilpin. If the board, let me expand on that. If the board wanted my staff to evaluate me, I'm fine with that. If you want to do like a 360 evaluation, that's fine. I'm not hiding anything, but historically we haven't, right? But yeah, for Gilpin, I would solicit information from staff. I probably wouldn't say, here's what James said, here's what Rondi and Ed
Right, but we would be able to see the comments.
Wes, but I say I would include my comments in there too. And I'd say, here's staff's comments, and then you would see, and here's board comments. You could all review those and then say, hey, generally it looks like we often look for numerical scores. That's what we've done, right? 1 to 5, right? And if Jim's average score is a 4.5, you can say, hey, that's pretty dang good. I think that's good enough to keep them. If it's 1.5, you may want to say it's time to move on. We don't need to prejudge here. We're talking process here today. I'm not looking for your thumbs up or thumbs down on Best and Krieger's services. I just want to make sure you're both comfortable with the process I've laid out and the reason behind it. And most of it's because we did hear a comment that the board member didn't feel they could evaluate their performance, or they couldn't go thumbs up or thumbs down on extending the services without having a chance to provide input. And that's a fair statement. So we want to make sure we do that this time. And I wouldn't say that as a breakdown in the process. We did evaluate Mr. Gilpin's firm last year. It just happened to be before the new board members came on board. So this would be your normal first time in this November timeframe. This is when we would be evaluating Best and Krieger. So like I said, just the timing of the election and the timing of the evaluation didn't lend itself to a determination whether you can that board member could support the extension of the legal services agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, I see a big thumbs up on the process, right?
Yes.
We'll go forward as I laid it out, and things may shift by a meeting or so, but you should expect on October we'll be kicking off the process, and in November we'll be trying to complete the evaluations.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. thought there was something else legal I wanted to bring up. I know it's not agendized, but you could tell me what to do with it. All right, I can't recall it now.
It's,
So,
just reach out to me if you think of it
Yeah,
later, Director
I'll do
Haynes.
I'll do that. Okay. If that's all, then I think we've accomplished what we wanted to, and we'll adjourn the meeting.